are becoming redundant day by day. So today, we are here to break the taboo and end. Today, we are here to break the taboo and talk about these closed room topics. So with this, I would like to welcome our chief guest for today's panel discussion, Ms. Prakshi Saha. She is the founder and director of a non-profit Har Adhikar. She is a law student and a feminist activist. She has experience of working at non-profits for over 4 years. She is a certified menstrual and sexuality educator for adolescents. Her areas of interest lie at the intersection of law, policy, and gender. I also welcome our other panelists, Rotaractor Aryan, Rotaractor Snigdha, Rotaractor Vanshit, Rotaractor Archie, and Rotaractor Harshit. I am Rotaract Shweta, and I'll be the moderator for today's discussion, and I hope that we have an interactive discussion. Prakshi ma'am, my first question is to you. How did you decide to form your non-profit Har Adhikar? Please tell us about your journey and experiences. Over to you, ma'am.
So, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Great. Also, it'll be so nice if you don't call me ma'am because I'm 21, so it's a little awkward. So about my non-profit, again, I started the whole, my interest in social impact or gender activism began when I was 15. I started with volunteering in a non-profit. It was called She Says, and I still remember, I have a very vivid memory of it. Because the founder of that organization is somebody who's been very inspirational to me. And they were, it was back in 2017, I think. And they were running a campaign against, the tax that was imposed on sanitary pads and how that made it very inaccessible for low-income communities, women from the low-income communities. And they filed a PL at the Supreme Court. And that was the first time I realized, because again, all of us, we come from our set of privileges. We live in cities, we go to English educated schools. We didn't realize that something as basic as sanitary pads is inaccessible to so many women. And the first time back in the day, now the number has, gone down. But when I heard the number, it was 88% women did not have access to afford sanitary pads. Only 12% did. And it just struck me like, a boulder. I was like, oh my God, I'm like one of the few privileged people who have access to something which is so basic for our health, our sanitation needs. So that was like my first introduction into, activism in this field. And I was 16 then. After that, I started researching a lot. I was writing for digital media platforms about it. But that was that. I mean, I was in school. I didn't know much. Then, of course, I was a part of a fellowship where I was pushed to do a lot of on-ground work, which was in around 2019, 2020. I reached out to women from low-income communities, spoke to them. And of course, my personal experience was there. I live in a metropolitan city. When I went into posh school and still got zero menstrual education. So that was that, but I had access to the internet, so I could just look it up maybe. But most people did not, a lot of people did not. It was confusing to them. So all these factors, I officially started my nonprofit last year because that is quite a difficult process. I was not sure if I was ready to start an organization of my own. I did it at 20, which was even scarier. But yeah, that's how my nonprofit happened. Before that, I worked with a lot of incredible other organizations. I worked on my own. I researched a lot. I would write on this topic. So I feel like my interest in the space of sexual and reproductive health rights have existed for quite a long time. It stemmed from both my personal experience and from people around me in whatever I've gained from the field work that I did. Yeah.
Wow, that is very inspiring. So, ma'am, I want to ask something. Like half of women's life is spent bleeding, but the society, they just don't care. They treat women when they are on their periods as a disgrace. They found them impure and dirty. So, why do they think like that, and how can we decrease it?
Um, so I mean, there's no particular why besides just patriarchy in general, which is extremely intrinsic in our cultures, and you just told that, that women are supposed to, which is funny because women's roles are looked at as supposed to reproduce, right? When they're treated as sexual objects, they're supposed to reproduce. But nobody goes into the reason why how reproduction is happening. Right? If periods wouldn't be happening, reproduction wouldn't be happening. But again, it's not so much about logic or science, all these things. People believe what they want to believe, and they have believed that menstruation is something impure, and it's the religious and cultural notion of how it is not pure has existed for centuries, and people have just followed it, and there's been so little discussion that it just went on and on. I don't think there's like particular reason besides patriarchy in general. But what can we do about it? Is just feel mandatory menstrual education uh, for school children, like adolescents, is the only way forward. Having conversations like these is the only way forward, because again, the digital media has played its very good role, because today a lot of information, say 10 years ago, if somebody wanted information on sex education or whatever, like really tiny details about menstruation, they wouldn't get it at the tip of their fingers. Now we have like educators on Instagram doing like such incredible job. So the internet has played its positive role in bringing about the awareness. But again, we have to see who is accessing the internet. Not everybody is accessing the internet, right? Um, so just mandatory education in schools is the only way forward, and that is what we as an organization has been doing. So at Radhikar, we have researched and developed a comprehensive menstrual health education curriculum. We have like doctors and SRH educators who is on our advisory panel, and we've been reaching out to schools to take these workshops. And it's not just very biological, a lot of I know a lot of schools, they probably cover the topic of reproduction in a very technical sense, but I don't think it's enough to cover it in a technical sense just to tell you that this is what is happening to you. Um, because it's something you're experiencing when you're very young, like a 10-year-old and 11-year-old is not supposed to, like, what am I going to do knowing what the biology is like? There are other questions which is involved, what about the emotional changes that I'm experiencing, how do you manage our periods? Sometimes people have, our cycles are so different. Right now, we have so many product options and the internet is just flooded with it. So how do you know which product you have to choose? How do you know on these days, how do you take care of yourself? Do you want to rest, or nobody tells us all these things? So in our curriculum, we have adopted a very socio-emotional learning approach where we prioritize the needs of the menstruating person at the center. So besides the biology, we talk about how they choose the right period product to use, or what do they do, the food they eat, the exercise they do, the self-care around it. So all these things needs to be covered. So yeah, I think just menstrual health education in schools is the only way forward in decimating the information further. I mean, I don't think we can tackle the stigma that exists in people of the previous generation. So the only way forward is if you give it to the younger generation. I mean, I keep having conversations with my mom all the time, and she had no clue. So initially she's like, she didn't know what I was doing and why I was doing it. Out of the blue, I'm on the internet talking about things. But then I explained her there's so many people who do not have access to this information, and they drop out of school because of it. All these like related factors, and some in the beginning she was a little uncomfortable, and now maybe 3-4 years later she's pretty chill about it. So I think as young people, if we have access to this information, we can further decimate it to other people around us.
Yes, ma'am, I absolutely agree. And now I would request other panel members to please share their views, what all they feel, and also they can ask questions to ma'am.
It was very great to know about your thoughts and your work you have done all these years, and I very much appreciate all these works. But ma'am, there are many myths related to menstruation, and also I have encountered a myth like, does tamarind or curd or pickles to actually affect the menstrual flow or not?
Yeah, so the other thing we cover in our curriculum, it's almost like I'm advertising for the curriculum we do, but we really try to cover everything, is myth busting, because myths are again something which we followed because our moms have told us, and then they have been following because their moms have told us, and it's been there forever. Most of them are not accurate scientifically. But yeah, so with regard to the food, no, it doesn't affect your menstrual cycle. It really doesn't. How much you bleed depends from a person to person. So their cycle, or some, if there's like some bodily changes happening, it depends. So if somebody's say suffering, there are like disorders which affect a person's menstrual flow, so like PCOS and endometriosis. All these are very technical things. I don't think just eating something like curd is going to affect your menstrual flow at all. That's not true. Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Myself, Archie Kumar. I felt very great by hearing your experience and organization. So, like the curd, tamarind, I also have heard this myth some time ago. I also heard that jaggery should not be eaten during periods. I have read that high processed food, packaged foods should not be eaten during periods. Like physical activity should not be done during periods. So, is it true, or we can eat anything during this time?
So with regard to physical activities, it's completely a myth. It's actually very, very advisable to work out on your workout and just be on the move, because that just helps with the flow. So what happens is, this is what our uterus looks like. So it's actually the size of a fist. The reason we experience the cramps is because the uterus is like contracting, itself. So you'll see you usually experience the pain that you experience in the first couple of days. So because there's like blood across along the lines of the wall. So if you're on the move, if you move a lot, you work out or whatever, nothing heavy, but if you're just walking, running, whatever you're doing, it actually helps with the flow. So your cramps are relieved if you exercise. So like physical activities it should be done, other than the other way around. Food, I don't think there's directly a major effect, but you should be eating healthy. That just helps because you're bleeding out. So if you eat vegetables and fruits and all of these things, it kind of helps. It keeps you healthy. But nothing is banned. Isn't like if you say chocolate is something, and there's like enough research about it. I was reading it the other day. Like scientists from Stanford has like research that our chocolate craving is something which goes up and down depending upon which time of the cycle we are in. So if whatever makes you, it's also a lot of emotional stuff that's happening. Is we have all of us have established that menstruation is not just a biological process, but affects our emotional health, right? So if something makes you happy, you want to eat it, just eat it, right? Otherwise, if you can avoid a bit of oily food, that's okay. That helps you. But nothing is banned. It's not going to harm you or anything. So I would say eat healthy, try to eat healthy. But if you want to eat something, if you're having the craving to have an ice cream or chocolate, just go ahead, do it. That's going to make you feel nice only.
Okay, that was a great thing to hear. And since we are talking about myths, there is also a myth that girls who are having periods, they should not walk around plants or should not touch it. Is it really the case? So,
No, it is not. And I'm going to just explain it to you what is happening. Let me just a primer, I'm sure all of you know. But say if there's the uterus and then there's like a lining on the uterus, and you know why menstruation happens, right? Our body just prepares once a month so that we can get pregnant. And when we don't have sex when we don't have unprotected sex and there's no fertilization that happens, the whole preparation that our body does, the body is basically preparing for a pregnancy every month. That's what's happening. So when we're not having unprotected sex, there's no fertilization that is happening. The body is like, oh my God, this month I have no other job. So the whole preparation, which is basically the endometrium along with the egg, just comes out of our system. That's it. That's what's happening. So something that is happening so internal to our body, it's like saying, I don't know, digestion. Is it affected if you walk around a plant? It's not, right? So it's an internal process because of 20 other reasons it's happening inside our body. So it is not affected by anything external. So something like, if you touch a pickle or, it gets spoiled. That's not physically, scientifically possible, because whatever is happening inside our body, it's an internal process, cannot really affect anything outside. You touching something, you walking around something. That's not true.
Good evening, ma'am. It's been lovely listening to you. I would like to ask different colors of blood we have during periods, and do they need to concern us?
Yes, that's a good question. So again, you get you can access it. There's lots of educational website out there which explain it in a better way. But what happens is most of the times it's fine. So if it's you're bleeding like red, then it's fine. If it's a little lighter shade of red, it probably means that your hemoglobin is a little low on the end. So light pink, dark pink, red, all that is fine. If your blood looks a little darker in shade, like it's a little brownish, so that happens towards the end of the cycle, which is also mostly fine. But say if you're experiencing, again, this is how I tell the students, like the children I teach, if your cycle is regular, and you bleed, so basically the parameters are 2 to 7 days, right? 2 days is the minimum, and 7 8 days is the maximum. So if you're bleeding anything less than that, or you're bleeding anything more than that, you're bleeding for like 10 days, that's when you should consult a doctor. The cycle, your menstrual cycle, which is supposed to be from 21 to 35 days. Again, how do you measure a menstrual cycle? So the first day of your period in this month to the first day of next month. So that's a cycle. So it's not a monthly thing. So a lot of us think that it's supposed to happen after 30 days. It's not true, actually. So it's supposed to happen 21 to 35 days. So if your cycle length and your period length is normal, as in it's a range, right? There's no one particular answer if it falls within the range. And if you're bleeding adequately, that should be fine, except if, say, throughout the period, if your blood looks brown or black, that should be a reason of concern. You go see a doctor. Or if you are not bleeding at all, if you're just bleeding, say, for a day, that could be concern. But rest of it, it's fine. I think depending upon which day of the cycle you're on, our color switches a little bit here and there.
Hi, Prakshi. I am Harshit. And it's amazing that we are having this conversation today, because this is, of course, obviously super rare. And it's amazing to know your journey and the things that you have done in your path. I have a question that, what do you think what IMS is? And why is it sometimes referred to as male menopause? Love to know about it.
Yeah, can I tell you honestly that I don't research enough and I don't work with male reproductive sexual health that much. So I really don't know much about it. So mostly focus on women's sexual and reproductive health, right?
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah, super cool. Awesome.
Don't want to give you misinformation. You can just, yeah.
No, that's amazing. We can now move to the next question. Panelists, over to you.
So I had also a question about if any guy bleeds, but since you have told that you don't want, I think you are not able to. If you can,
But I can tell you that bleeding for men is not normal. So if you're bleeding, if you're experiencing unnatural amount of pain in your penis, all that is signs that you should go see a doctor. That is for sure. That's something I know.
Like, ma'am, but like I have read that trans men, like those women who convert into men and those who do not take testosterone or non-binary, they get periods also. So like
yes. Yeah. So just to clarify, every time in this panel I have referred to men and women, I mean cis men and cis women. The case with non-binary and trans people are very different. So that's why the whole point that menstruation is not a women's thing is something I kind of keep using the word menstruator instead of women, is because we have to make conversations more inclusive. So trans people, trans men, if you talk about bleed because again they have uterus and unless they have, it depends on which stage of their hormone therapy they are on. It's actually a very complicated process. It's not a general answer you can give because so when we talk about trans men, they actually have the uterus and all these female reproductive system in their body. So that's why they're supposed to bleed. And actually that's very dysphoric. It's actually a very traumatic experience for trans people to bleed because it just reminds them of the gender they're not. So that's why trans men bleed. And non-binary people can be people of any gender, so they also bleed. So, and it also depends upon which stage of their hormone blockers and hormone therapy they're on. So that's a different question, and it doesn't have a general answer because it depends upon people to people and
yes,
what medication they're on.
so I have also researched about tampons. Like I have got questions like on the net that virgin women should wear tampons, like it sometimes tears the hymen layer and they can lose virginity, they think. Also, I have a question from the chat box from Ujjwal Mishra that some of the female friends only prefer pads during periods, although I have heard that pads are injurious to health and menstrual cups are more comfortable. So what are your views about it, about tampons?
Yeah. Great. So I do a lot, like I do enough talk about period products because it's just something we're not taught enough. So the question about why do women feel comfortable wearing pads is just, it's not very comfortable an experience, but it's the only information we've got, for the longest time. So say all of us, most of us started bleeding when we were 10, 11, 12. And essentially pad is what our mothers probably gave to us. And that's what we've been experiencing. I was like really old when I first saw other products exist and people were using. So say it's something if you're more comfortable with, because that has the most info, we know the more about it. There's advertisements on TV. Have you ever seen an advertisement of a cup or a cloth pad ever? No, right?
No.
So that is why we feel comfortable, because we are familiar with it. All of us, anything, if it's something new, if it's something about which we do not have enough information, we don't want to trust that product. And menstruation itself is such a messy, difficult process. So you don't want to put something in your body, especially if you're talking about cups or tampons. So if you're not familiar with the product, you don't want to use it. It's the first reason. The second reason is the companies, this is actually a very important reason. So the companies which manufacture plastic pads spread a lot of misinformation. And I'm saying this from personal experience. So right now, what I use is cloth pads. and I've made the switch 1 year ago. And before I made the switch, I was extremely anxious and hesitant to make that switch. Because if you open the TV and you watch any sanitary pad advertisement, there is a doctor or a mother telling the child that a cloth is extremely unhygienic and you're not supposed to use it. It leaks, it is uncomfortable. And it's something I have watched over and over again all these years. So I believed them for some reason or the other. So I was like, I don't want to spend money buying them. And then I don't know if it's uncomfortable. How do I go out and like attend college? I didn't want to. But cups were somehow not working for me. And then like a company actually sent me some samples and they were like, they gifted me and they were like, give us some feedback. And I was like, okay, now that I have the product, what do I do with it? So I used it for the first time and my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God, this is so comfortable. And for all these years, I have believed in things which are not true. So again, A, we don't have enough information about other products. B, we have misinformation about other products. So that kind of stops us from venturing into anything outside sanitary pad. Answering the question somebody asked on the chat box. Again, the other question about why do people hesitate using tampons or cups? Because again, internal products, anything which involves insertion is scary. Okay, let's just admit it. It's very scary inserting something into your body. The question about virginity, let me break it down to you. There are two things here. A is virginity is a social construct. It's a social idea. There's nothing in our body which determines virginity. Okay, there is no medical practitioner who can examine your body and tell you if you have had sex or not. It is impossible. If somebody has told you otherwise, they were lying. Virginity as a concept came about by men, patriarchy, because they wanted to control women's bodily autonomy, their sexual independence. That's why they said that, if you have sex, it really changes who you are as a person, etc., etc. It's not true. The whole thing about hymen is very funny. Hymen is not actually a wall. We think it's a wall, and if you have sex or you insert a tampon, it just breaks and it's damaged forever, but it's not. Hymen is actually very different for different people. It looks different, but most likely I'll give you a closest example of what it looks like is the scrunchie that you use to tie your hair. That's what it looks like. So it's an elastic. The opening of the vagina is elastic. No matter how many times you've had sex, unless like there's a birth happening, if you've had sex, your vagina does not become loose or broken or torn apart, all these words we use. It's not true. So sometimes the whole of the hymen is different for different people. A lot of, like for most women, it doesn't affect at all. For some women, if it's a little smaller, say when there's sexual intercourse, it can get expanded a little bit. But that's it. There's no tearing happening. There's no wall only. It's an elastic opening. So like, I'm sorry if I'm going on and on, but virginity is like such a myth and we've believed it for so long, but it's not true. But inserting anything, it can be a little scary because it's just, I don't know how to explain this word, it's scary. So that's why a lot of people don't use it. And we're just told not to, it's something we have internalized and conditioned to understand. Cups are of course more convenient, comfortable, healthy than tampons. With tampons, again, I think a lot of people just scare us telling that you're going to get toxic shock syndrome, which is true. I mean, if you get it, you'll die, but you don't get it usually. So if you change your tampon, you take your tampons out before 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours, it's safe, good to go. But if you wear it anywhere between more than 12 hours, it's very dangerous. So don't do that. Cups, again, if you have to switch to cup, you have to do a lot of research. because the folds and how to just put it inside your body is kind of difficult. And just putting it inside and taking it out is something you learn. Maybe the first month it's going to be very difficult. 3-4 months later, it's going to get easier. So a lot of people hesitate to make that change. But if you have made that change, it's everybody I know have said that they've enjoyed it. It makes your experience more comfortable. But again, this is something I want to let end. Now I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to end by saying the question on period product is that don't feel the pressure to switch to a product because now there's too much buzz on the internet, sustainability. All our bodies are different. Our cycles are different. How much we bleed, how much pain we experience, all this is different. So a product may work for you, may not work for your friend. The other way around. You can try, but you don't have to switch. If a sanitary pad feels comfortable to you, just you keep using that. If a cup works for you, great. Doesn't, that's fine too. So I want just prioritize your comfort, your bodily comfort over anything else when you're switching to a product or thinking about switching. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you. Like, I can share 2 instances of the ads that the plastic sanitary pads are shown. First of all, it is shown that you can use these pads for 12 hours. And it is very uncomfortable for 12 hours to wear the same pad. It is like blood stains can occur on your garments also. And it is said that you should not use a pad for more than 6 hours. Another instance that I can share is that blue color was shown on the pad, and it was majorly discussed that why red color blood is not shown there. And when I first searched about tampon, I got scared that because many women said that they got blood stains on their garments, and that was why I was scared to not use it. Like now also I use plastic sanitary pads. Now that's my discussion. I request the other panelists to take over.
Well, I have a feeling that this session is going to be an absolute myth buster for all of us. And speaking of myths, I want to ask my panelists about some myths, okay? So do you think that a woman can get pregnant during her periods if she had sex?
According to me, because periods happen when an egg gets spurt, egg like disintegrates, like there is no sex and no pregnancy, that then the uterus lining falls and blood flows. But there is a chance, that pregnancy can happen if you have sex during periods. So that's my point. I invite other panelists to keep on their points.
Well, I think the same, that it can lead to the pregnancy issue. So, what I suggest or what I think that whenever you had an intercourse or intercourse or sex, you should have the protection on, and that's the only suggestion I would give.
I do agree with Aryan and RG. And what I think is that there are chances even during the periods of getting pregnant, but the chances are comparatively less when the sex is happen. But when the period when there is not period, when the woman is not suffering, women is not having her periods. So what I think is, yeah, the using of protection or use of protection should be the best way to avoid any unwanted pregnancy.
So, like, I would like to share an instance with you all. When I was 12, my sister got her first period, and she said that you go and bring pads for me from the shop. When I went to the shop, I gave it to the shopkeeper. He gave it in a black polythene. And I was like very embarrassed because why are you giving me these? Like, I was shocked because I didn't know that time what are periods and why are they giving this to me. So I want to ask ma'am and other panelist members also, should sanitary products be packed in a bag or used to cover them in a newspaper? Like, what do you all think?
Yes, we definitely need a expert's opinion. Please, Prakshi.
I mean, again, I think after so much of discussion, we have established how the shame is something which the society and culture has imposed on menstruation, and there's nothing shameful about it. And it's like, probably it indicates how perfectly healthy you are if you're bleeding. Um, so that's why, again, it makes no sense, no logic at all to do it. But people are embarrassed, it's a taboo topic, all these are reasons. And the way you can, make a change is just every time you are going in, I do that, okay? And I see so many other people do it. When every time I'm at a pharmaceutical shop, I actually see it, and it's a welcome change, I would say. There are women who walk in and they say, you know what, I don't need that bag. And as a shopkeeper, you can't do, you have to do what the customer is saying at the end of the day. The man is going to make a face and give it to you as it is. So if every time we go to buy it and we say that it's fine, you don't have to wrap it up, that can be a good step one to do away with the shame.
So like
I
if I
agree.
talk about now, then when I went to a shop, then there was a girl who asked me that what pads do you use? Like she discussed with me that what are it, like society is changing. I think there is a change in society and it will change. The change will take longer, but it will change. I think now, as we have discussed about menstruation, let's take up on the topic of sex education. So do all the panelists and ma'am think that sex education should be made compulsory in school or not?
I think first we should hear about what Prakshi ma'am had to say about this.
Yeah, literally a big yes. I'm literally developing a curriculum on comprehensive sexuality education to be made mandatory in schools. So I don't think I can explain it anymore. Because again, I think sex ed is kind of still an older concept. Currently, what advocates who talk about sexual and reproductive health rights talk about is comprehensive sexuality education. So it's not just sex what we understand, which is basically vaginal and penile intercourse. It's so much more than that. You have to understand consent, and somebody needs to tell young people what consent is. Sexuality education, CSE. Now I'm going to use CSE. CSE includes, understanding the gender and sexuality spectrum, understanding that sex is so much more, because every time you mean that the penis inserting into a vagina is only the only definition of sex, you are being exclusionary towards queer people, right? So sex is so much more because queer people are having sex and all that is valid. Um, so yeah, it's not just the biology, which is in the biology books, which is just for cis men and cis women. Right now, which more and more people are talking about is comprehensive sexuality education. So tackling it, the wholesome around it. We talk about emotions, we talk about relationships, all these issues which say a 14, 15-year-old is supposed to get information about. So yeah, big yes to making CSE mandatory.
What about the other panelists? You can discuss your views.
I think
Well,
it's a yes only because what we learn in schools, and we only have two chapters related to the reproduction in humans, that is in class 8th and 10th. It is far beyond that. It is not, it is something which is need to be valued. It is because I think teaching sex education to the students can decrease the rape cases in the world, because it is the rape cases happen only because of lack of consent, and the people who have done who are doing rapes, they just think that it will be satisfactory for both of the genders. So yeah, it is a need to enable sex education in schools, and it should be done in a way so that every child is comfortable in asking the questions related to that.
yes, I agree with both Prakshi and Aryan. It is an absolute necessity that we include this in our curriculum, because I think there is no way you can stop a curious person from knowing it. You can only make his or her way forward a little clearer and better with less potholes. And I think that can happen when we delete the conformity from the society which we live in. We need to ask more questions and just normalize this thing. It's a normal thing.
Like
So
I
I
would,
have a question. Uh,
may I say, I would like to add a point to this question.
sure, Raj.
Like in the chat box, Azra Khan has made a good point that there is like so much taboo related to sex. So if we will get to know things beforehand, it will make a huge difference. Like when I first knew about sex, like I was very disgusted and I was very confused, that because earlier I used to think that like mother used to think one day that I will give birth to a baby and boom, the baby comes. So it is very important to let a child know about what sex is, because teenage is a very crucial age. Like many hormonal and emotional changes happen, and if you know about it, you will be very comfortable, I think, and you will not be confused. Over to the other panelists.
so I would like to ask a question to all the panelists and Prakshi ma'am as well. That ma'am, some parents feel that sex education is not for their children. It is obscene and teaches children to have sex at an early age. So do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough question. Because I'll just tell you, I went to a convent missionary school, okay, where they practice celibacy. So the only kind of sex education they believe in is abstinence, as not to have sex. And that is actually the logic of everybody, like teachers, principals, parents, is that if you give children sex education, they're going to be having more sex, which is very stupid, because it comes from a belief or denial, I would say, that young people are not having sex. That's what parents like to believe, but it's not true. Young people are having sex. I mean, you accept it, you want to talk about it or not, they are, right? So why don't we just make it easier for them? Uh, I mean, this is something I think Jamil said. I mean, due credit to her. I mean, learning about sex from porn is like learning how to drive by watching Fast and the Furious. It is the worst possible thing you can do. And that is what probably 95% of the population does. That's where their sex education comes from. It is violent, it is absurd, it is far away from what normal sex looks like. It preaches unusual standards of beauty, and there's no topic of consent. It's just wrong, is the conclusion. And that's not where your children are supposed to learn about sex from. It's extremely harmful. So just accepting that young people are having sex, you want to talk about it or not, so why not equip them with the right information, access to contraceptives, whatever, XYZ, whatever they need to make healthy decisions about their sexual health.
Thank you, ma'am. I would request the other panelists to give their views as well.
What I think is the child is very curious at the teenage ages, as we have discussed. Yeah, we should. The concern of the parents is right, because if it is very natural that if we learn something, we also check the more. We tend to check more about it, or we tend to have more information about it, and that's where the bad things happen to the children, like they watch porn instead of the good sex. So like the parents, they as a parent, it is their duty to tell their child in a way so that he understands the correct age, the correct time to have the sex. It is natural to have feelings for it, but yeah, everything has to happen on a correct time, or to escape from the unwanted pregnancies or the other another problems the partners can face.
Like according to me, children are like teenage, I said it, teenage is a very crucial age. Like we also have experienced attraction towards other genders, and if you go to porn, I read that porn is an imaginary thing. Like sex does not happens like that, it is not done like that. And if a child is has an access to porn, and if he gets addicted to it, there are many mental problems also that happen to him or her. So if I should talk about it, then children should get sex education. Like family and school are the basic institutions of a child. Like he learns everything from them first, and then he goes to the internet. And internet is a vast pool of information, and it is up to you that you access right or wrong. So that's all from me.
Absolutely
Talking
right.
about
Do you want to say something? You have raised your hand.
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to address this because somebody sent this to me on my personal chat. So I'm not going to name her, but so somebody told me to shed light on, you know, how it's just unusual standards about how our genitalia are supposed to look, and that creates like a lot of anxiety for young people, um, which is very, very important. So thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, so I mean, our vulva is, again, it's not, I think, vagina. Okay, Mythbuster, whatever you see down there for women, it's not called vagina. It's called the vulva. Vagina is the canal which is inside. You can't really see the vagina. But the vulva is, you know, supposed to be dark and hairy, and it's just that's what normally vulvas look like. So whatever you see in porn is not real. That's not what most like any person looks like. Again, I don't know if everybody has watched Sex Education, but reference from Sex Education, there is a website, I think it's called All Vulvas Are Beautiful. It has a diverse representation of all vulvas. Everybody should check that out. That kind of makes you feel good about your body. Yeah, that's it. That's what I wanted to cover.
I really wanted to ask that are there any repercussions of watching porn for a long time? I would like that Prakshi ma'am answer that.
So besides, I mean, watching porn is super normal. Most people do it. I don't like, I would discourage very young people to watch it, and that shouldn't be their first source of information. But there's no harmful effect. Besides, if you, this is actually a rule to determine if masturbation is healthy or not. Is if you realize you watching porn or you masturbating every day is disrupting with your daily activities, that's when you know you might want to see a therapist. Otherwise, it's fine. You can watch it. Even daily is not a problem. So every time you realize it, your daily activities are getting disrupted, your normal routine is getting disrupted because you have the urge to watch it so much. That is probably when you should see a therapist. Otherwise, it's super normal. I think a lot of us do it a lot often. Yeah, there's nothing harmful per se.
Thank you so much, Prakshi. But it is said that, that what means masturbating for a longer period of time or for regular period of time can have an impact on your health. Like you can experience fatigue and lack of concentration. Is it true?
It is not actually all. There are like, I think there are 2022 myths around masturbation. None of it is true. There's actually a lot of great research about how masturbating every day can reduce your chances of cervical cancer, and some really, really crazy uh, research being done. So it's very healthy. It doesn't affect your stamina. I don't know. There's just too many myths, and I see these sex educators on the internet answer questions to masturbation uh, like every day because it's one of the most common doubts people have. So again, it's completely healthy, does not affect anything. A lot of people are like, oh, this is a side effect, this is what happens to your body. Nothing happens. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you realize that your need or your urge to masturbate is disrupting your physical, like whatever you have to do in the day or your daily activities, your work, your studies, that probably means you kind of addicted to it, and that's when you should see a therapist. Otherwise, physically, it's not harmful at all. No ill effects.
Thank you so much,
So there is a
Prakshi.
question in the chat box from Priyanshu Kashyap and Akash. Is periods related to female mood swings? Like I have heard about PMS, premenstrual syndrome, like when the females start their periods, they get mood swings, their legs hurt. Like my legs hurt when my periods are starting. So what do you think about it, ma'am, and other panelists?
So yeah, I mean, mood swings are completely, absolutely related to the menstrual cycle and whatever time of the month you're in. Actually, we keep talking about PMS, which is fair. But it's basically premenstrual syndrome, and a lot happens. It's not just mood swings. I mean, your breasts get tender, and there's just pain, and different people experience different symptoms. There's a host of symptoms that happens just before you get your periods. But the thing is, mood swings actually depend across your cycle. So you'll see, say, just after you get done with your periods, if you experience it, then at that point of time, your estrogen. So if you have a period tracking app, I think I use Flow. So that actually tells me that, oh, today you're in a happy mood. So a lot of times, any time between your cycle, if you are extremely happy, if you're rejuvenated, you're energetic, that is also related to your cycle. As in, that probably means that you have higher levels of estrogen and progesterone. The reason just before periods our mood swings is basically just grumpy and annoyed and angry is because both progesterone and estrogen just runs out, mostly progesterone. So even if you experience good mood, that is also anytime between in your cycle, that is also related to the hormones in your body.
What about other panelists?
That's true. What I've heard is that when periods happen, we all know what the process is, right? The uterus wall breaks because it doesn't receive a fertilized egg, and the body tries to rebalance itself, and the hormones, they try to rebalance itself themselves too. This is why mood swings happen. And I think it's completely normal with periods.
Since we are talking about PMS, I had a question. I think you have been familiar with the term PMDD. It has been considered a severe form of PMS. So I really wanted to ask that is there any connection between between what a woman who is facing PMDD have any connection with the feelings of love? Putting it correctly, is there any issue she can face if she is there any issue if she can face when she is suffering from PMDD in a relationship related to the feelings of love? Can PMDD mess up the feelings of love for a woman?
Yeah, so if I have to answer that, firstly, PMDD is actually a very kind of severe. So it stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So it's actually kind of very intense, and it needs to be treated by a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But it's extremely underdiagnosed. Most doctors and medical professionals don't acknowledge it enough, and so it's a really severe. It's a serious disorder, is what I'm talking about. There is no connection of PMDD with your emotional, sexual understanding of things, especially love. There's no direct connection. But I think the reason you might feel so is basically, say, if a menstruating person, say a woman, is experiencing really, so it's the symptoms of PMDD is similar to severe anxiety or even depression, right? So that's how you feel about yourself. So it's natural. The way you're feeling about yourself is going to affect how you are reacting to things, how you're behaving with the other person. So depression has no connection to your relationships, but if a person who's suffering from depression is in a relationship, it's going to affect their understanding of things, because your emotional health is directly related to how you react to things, how you talk to your behavior changes. So all these things, it's not directly related, but it's just in turn related, if that makes sense.
I have a question. I have a question regarding medications during periods. Some of us, to avoid menstrual cramps, we take medication. So does it affect our health in any way?
I would also like to interrupt, like here we are talking about PMS, and there is a question from Arya Gupta that how to tackle that menstrual cramp, because it is a major problem for females all over the world that cramps occur. So suggest some easy ways for the same.
Okay. So first is I'm going to make a very honest confession to Snigdha's question, is that for the longest time, when I say longest, I mean when I was in school, I used to have really, really, really bad cramps. And for some reason, I thought that having medicine on a regular basis is something that's not healthy. So I actually endured all that pain, and I can't believe I did that. But I actually believe in that. It's not a myth, it's just something most people believe. Even I think there'll be some medical professionals also who are a little skeptic to prescribe medicines. But yeah, that's what most people believe. But again, it's not harmful at all, actually. Having menstrual spaz or whatever, that's what most of us have. Couple of days in a month does not affect your overall health for a long or in the long term. It does not at all. But in case you know somebody does not want to have medication, or your pain is not that much. So right now I don't experience a lot of pain. So I think the best way to relieve period pain is to use a hot water bag. That is magical, and that just works every time. Otherwise, there are certain exercises which actually helps with cramps. So again, and if your pain after you try all these homemade remedies, and drinking warm water also helps. So if you try the homemade remedies and you have the medicine, and still your pain is so much that you're unable to get up from your bed, that is when you should see a gynecologist. It might mean you have some other disorder like endometriosis, which causes unbearable period pain. It's not like the natural cramps which all of us experience. So despite trying the remedies, despite having the common painkillers, if your pain is not subsiding or dying down, that is when you should see a doctor. Yeah.
So like with cramps, there is a question from Azra Khan that there are girls who just don't suffer pain at all during periods. So is this okay?
Yeah, it is okay. It's just fine. As I said, like all our cycles and our bodies are very different. So no two women experiences their period in the same fashion. So it's healthy. No, nothing to worry about.
Do you think that men and women both bleed in their first time having sex? The question is open to anyone. You can answer.
Like if I have to talk upon it, there is a social stigma that women should bleed during their first intercourse, and it shows that they're virgin, but it is not necessary. Like if sex is not intense enough, there should be no bleeding. I have researched about it, and I think that you will have bleeding if you have any disorder, any disease, or there are STIs. There will be pain and there will be blood. Some women bleed during their first intercourse, and I don't know much about men. I would like to ask Prakshi ma'am about it only. That's from my side.
Yeah, so I don't think it's healthy for men to bleed at all. So if you're bleeding, go see a doctor. For women, again, so I don't remember the exact statistics, but there is this statistic which says that this many percentage of women bleed for the first time. But again, I think I explained it how the hymen is kind of different for different people. But ideally, sex is not supposed to be painful for any person, especially let's talk about people with vulvas. It's not supposed to be painful at all. So it's something we are told and we're conditioned to believe. If it is, and it's just a word of advice to anybody, if it feels painful, you're supposed to stop. You're not supposed to go ahead with anything which feels painful, because it's supposed to be pleasurable. Just 2 tips to avoid the pain for anybody who wants to have their sexual debut and kind of is anxious, because I think the whole conversation around how it's painful, how it's if we bleed, creates a lot of anxiety for people who want to have sex for the first time, young people, right? It's scary for them. So just 2 tips is you can use lubrication very, 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 very helpful. So lubricants are just available at any pharmacy shop. So that, I mean, our vaginas naturally lubricate. So the other tip is basically to indulge in a lot of foreplay. So that really helps with the natural lubrication. So before deep penetration happens, if you indulge in a lot of foreplay, that makes it easier and more comfortable and pleasurable for the woman. But in case for the first few times when you're really scared, use, or I think just lubricants make it very pleasurable. So more people should talk about lubricants. So that kind of doesn't make it painful.
I had a question like many of the women or the people, they use sex toys, men's also use them. So I personally am not in favor of them, and I don't believe that share in a relationship or in something we should use sex toys. So any views of the panelist and yours?
See, I think it is like a sport. Sex is like a sport, and some people might like it adventurous, and some people might like it, go smooth and easy. It's about the preference. That's what I would say.
So like there
Yeah,
are
I
many
mean,
questions. Yeah, go on, ma'am, please.
just to give, also just whoever needs to listen, I have a meeting in another 5-10 minutes. So just I'll need to go in sometime. Yeah, so with regard to sex toys, I feel it's very important to not be judgmental about it. Again, if you don't prefer it, don't use it. But it is again, sex is a very pleasurable act for most people. So if it enhances somebody's pleasure, great. I mean, you should go ahead, use it. Again, since it's a physical need, right? We feel horny sometimes, and super normal. That's how our hormones behave. So if you are not in a relationship and you don't have somebody to have sex with, it's such a healthy way to deal with. It's like saying masturbating, right? It's like saying, oh, if you are not in a relationship, you're not supposed to have pleasure. So the same way, I mean, I think sex toys just enhance your experience of masturbation, right? So it's super healthy for men, women, whoever wants to use it. If you don't prefer it, don't use it. But I feel just you should be less judgmental about it, because there is a lot of shame around using sex toys.
So time is limited and we cannot take many questions now. So we have a very interactive audience and there are many questions that have come in the chat box. The first question is by Tikshu, that will it affect our body when we have breast pain during menstrual period?
It's actually super normal to have tender and painful breasts just before your period, and it lasts through your period, and after that it gets normal. So that's how it depends upon you. Again, the whole tender and painful breast is actually one of the symptoms of premenstrual syndrome. So yeah, super healthy, nothing to worry about.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Since we have limited time, so I would request all the panel members to please conclude their thoughts. So please tell us the way forward. So let's have a conclusion. So let's start with Rotaractor Arvind.
So yeah, coming to an end, I would like prefer to everyone. So to educate the other person for sex education or like these things, I have a recommendation like you should pick up one person like who are you comfortable with, and you can teach him the needful things and ask him to talk to some other person he's comfortable with thing, so that it would create a chain and it would create a balance in the society and would help the message to reach to a larger audience. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. Rotaractor Harshit.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to Prakshi Saha. This has been an amazing myth buster of a session for me. I'm cuffed to bits, and I listened a lot, learned a lot, and I would like to conclude, we need to normalize these things, right? It is normal to talk about sex. It is a biological process. We are all humans and animals, of course, and we just need to learn to embrace it and make it more normal, just like smart humans do.
Thank you, Harshit. Now moving on to Rotaractor Snigdha.
It was a very enlightening session for me personally. A lot of things I had myths about was busted, and I felt that a lot
You are mute, Snigdha.
of more sessions should be held, and I would love to be a part of those sessions. And to conclude, I would like to say that education in any form is important, and mostly sex education and menstruation education is a very important part of our lives, and we should be aware about it. So that's all, and I'm so thankful to all of you to make me a part of this session.
Thank you, Snigdha. Rotaractor Vanshit.
First of all, I would like to thank Prakshi for such a beautiful session, and I'm really grateful to hear or to get a chance to hear her. And yes, I have learned a lot, and there have been lots of myths which have been broken. And then talking about the takeaways, first of all, my takeaway would be that sex education is a must in our current curriculum. Secondly, communicating about our needs, about fantasies, about what we feel about our body is the only way we can go forward. So in a nutshell, yeah, communication is the key. And yes, thank you so much, and a panelist and the Prakshi for their valuable time and for giving me such a beautiful chance to hear all about your experiences. And yes, I would like to hear more from you, Prakshi, and I would be so grateful to be a part of future sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanshit. Now Rotaractor Archie.
First of all, thank you to Prakshi ma'am, to all the panelists, and mainly the audience that is till now with us. So I would like to conclude only that love, sex, gender, all are menstruation, all are the topics that should be discussed now. Society is changing and it will be changing. Sexual education, menstruation should be made a topic in our school for adolescents and for primary education also, I think. And masturbation is normal, sex is normal, periods is normal. So let's just talk about it. We are talking about it on social media, and just let's just bring it to the real life.
Yes, let's not shy away. So now, Prakshi ma'am, I would invite you so that you can give us your views.
Yeah, I think we have had enough discussion about, just normalizing conversations around periods and sex on a very individual level. But just to, set the record straight off for everybody here, since there are like a few of you, is that sex is extremely political. It's not about you just having sex, which is great. I mean, individual conversations are great, but I want us to remember that 23 million girls drop out of school every year when they start menstruating because they don't have access to period products, clean water, just hygienic toilets. People are denied access to contraception and safe pregnancies, and they're just people in positions of power who are men who make these decisions. So, or like queer people are just denied their right to love and be with the people they love. So when we talk about sex, we also have, I want all of us to, take a stand every time. So all these are very political issues. So, just I want us to remember that and take a stand every time something goes wrong across sexual and reproductive health rights is a policy issue. It is something which governments should prioritize. Everybody should have access to affordable period products, affordable contraception, access to safe abortions, and just right to love and have sex safely. Yeah, no matter their gender or sexual orientation.
Again, a big thank you, ma'am, for coming out and sparing your time. So now I would like to call Diya Keswani, who is the Director of Vocational Services, So Dia, please come. And without you, the event would not have been possible. So a big thank you to you too.
Okay, so thank you, Shweta, for your kind words. And I believe it's our teamwork, and for that, kudos to all the panelists. So, yeah, as said, that in India, even mere mention of the topic like menstruation and sex ed has been a taboo in the past. And even this date, the cultural and social influences appear to be a hurdle for advancement of knowledge on the subject. So culturally, in many parts of India, menstruation is still considered to be a dirty and impure. So the challenge of addressing the social cultural taboos and beliefs is in sex ed and menstruation in particular is further compounded by the fact that girls' knowledge levels and understanding of puberty, menstruation, and reproductive health are very low. So which ultimately lead to a lot of problems in a teenage life. So this is a way of addressing these issues and creating awareness, and we aim to do the same in future as well. With this, I would like to thank our chief guest, Ms. Pakshi, for coming today and enlightening us. So thank you so much, ma'am. A special token of thanks to our audience for being patient and active. And we will bring a lot more interesting webinars for you in future as well. So thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, everyone. Now you may leave the meeting. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Bye.